What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Parker Byrd Show here in the Legless Lounge. It looks a little bit different today. I'm at my grandparents' house. I'm here for our family Christmas party, but I have the absolute privilege to speak with somebody who has, his journey has inspired millions of people, including myself. He's a three-time All-American, an NCAA national champion, a motivational speaker, an ESPN analyst, and subject of a major feature film. But more than all of that, a man whose story shows what faith, grit, and what believing in God's plan looks like. Please help me welcome to the show Anthony Robles. Thank you, man, for being here, and it is a privilege to speak with you.
It's my pleasure, my friend. Thank you for taking time to speak with me today.
Of course. For the people out there that don't really know the full story, what was your introduction to wrestling, and what drew you to the sport initially from a young age?
Yeah, so actually, I moved from California to Arizona when I was 14 years old, and up until that point, I had no idea what wrestling was. I'd never seen a match before, never been to a practice, but my cousin lived in Arizona, and so we moved in July. I hadn't started school yet, so I had nothing to do, and I just remember one day he calls me up. He said, "Hey, come to wrestling practice with me. I think you'll like it." He's like, "Just try it out," and so I went. He wrestled at South Point High School in Tucson, and I remember getting on the mat with him and getting my butt kicked, but man, I fell in love with the sport from there on out. All I wanted to do from that point moving forward was just focus on wrestling and really being the best wrestler that I could be.
Yeah. And is he an older cousin? Is that right?
Yeah, he was about 3 years older than me. So, he was in his high school career and he had been going for a bit. And, we had talked over the phone a couple of times, when I was in California and he mentioned wrestling, but it was never something that caught my interest. But man, I'm so glad he was persistent about it because, just getting out there on the mat and actually feeling it and actually getting to scrap with somebody, it just lit the fire inside of me.
Yeah, that's cool, man. I have a similar experience because I have a 3 year a colder cousin that's 3 years older than me as well.
Mhm.
So I know what it's like growing up getting your butt kicked in all the sports. But you grew up with a even more than a challenge. You grew up with one leg. What are some of the biggest challenges that you've had to come? Both mentally and physically from an early age.
Yeah, I was born missing my leg, so this is all I've ever known. But, I think probably the biggest challenge for me, the physical side of it, honestly, I didn't know any different. So, just growing up, I learned to figure things out. I was like my brothers and my sister had two legs, I had one. It was just a matter of just kind of treating life like a puzzle and trying to maneuver
Mhm.
through and, adapt, change things up if I needed to. But I say that, the biggest challenge was definitely the mental part of it, just because, in my household, my family never made missing a leg a big deal. It was just like, okay, you're missing a leg, so what? You're just like us. But when I stepped outside, everyone else would look at me and treat me differently. They'd feel sorry for me. And, it was a struggle just allowing their doubt, and their low expectations of what I was capable of to become my doubt, and to become that ceiling over my head to where I would ask myself, well, can I really do this? Am I capable of anything I want because I'm missing this leg and because people see this as a big deal. So it was just making sure I controlled my thoughts growing up.
Yeah, that's good right there, dude. And people on the outside often do look at us as different,
Mhm.
a little bit less than. And you've
Mhm.
had to overcome challenges all your life, obviously, and even walking on to Arizona State. What was the experience like? Going in without a scholarship and having to prove yourself and prove to everybody like, hey, I'm Anthony. I'm here to kick some butt.
Yeah, I remember coming out of high school and I was hoping to get the big offers, the scholarship opportunities, but it wasn't there for me. But so yeah, I did have to prove myself all over again at a different level, because no one thought I could compete at that level. They didn't think I could be successful. But I think in a lot of ways it became motivation or extra motivation for me, to prove people wrong. And there were a lot of days in practice when I was going through college and I was struggling. Maybe I wasn't seeing the results as quickly as I hoped, or something just wasn't going my way. And I would think to myself, like, man, if I quit right now, I'm proving a lot of people right. I'm proving the naysayers, the doubters, the people that see me as less than. I'm proving them right. And I learned to use that negativity. What I saw as negativity as motivation. And I think to some extent we all have that in our lives. There's negative things out there, and the key is to learn how to use that as motivation, as fuel for your fire during the challenging times. Because yeah, it's great to focus on the goal. It's great to focus on the positive things, but sometimes along the journey, you're going to face some dark times. You're going to face those moments where you just want to break down. So if you can learn to utilize everything that's going on in your life to your advantage as motivation, that's a powerful thing to be able to do. So coming into ASU, I made it a point again to try to figure out how to do everything my teammates were doing. Didn't matter if it was on the wrestling mat, if it was on the track, in the wrestling, or in the weight room. If they were doing a workout, if they're doing something, I was right there alongside them, struggling. Just pouring my blood, sweat, and tears out, because I wanted to earn their respect. I wanted to show them, hey, I might be different, but I'm not less than. I'm going to figure out a way to be there with you guys, and I'm going to pull my weight. And as they saw that, as my team saw that, they got behind me, they supported me, and I think, little by little, the rest of the world began to see that. And I'm just grateful because wrestling gave me that platform to show what I was truly capable of.
Yeah, for sure. And, success came. I mean, you were, 2011 national champion. That doesn't come without a lot of hard work, a lot of sweat, and a lot of people pulling you up as well. A great support team. What do you remember most vividly about your 2011 NCAA championship run?
About the whole run in general?
Yeah, just the whole year. How was explain to us about that and all the feels and emotions that came with that.
Yeah, man, my senior year, I was wrestling free. There was no pressure on my back anymore, and I felt like for me, it was just all about just giving 100% effort. The result was going to be what it was going to be. I couldn't control that. All I can control is the hard work and effort that I put into it, and just giving my best that day. So my senior year, it was fun. I was just enjoying the moment, enjoying that final part of my wrestling journey, and my family was behind me. We're wrestling in Reno, we're wrestling in Vegas, they're in California, they're making their way around. My mom, my three brothers and my sister, they're there to support me. They were there at the NCAA tournament in Philadelphia. So, I feel like it was just really just a moment where I was no pressure. It was just having fun, just being blessed to have the opportunity that I was given and showing what I was capable of. And, getting to the NCAA tournament, I tried to block out the pressure from my head. I didn't worry about reporters or questions or all that. It was just, one match at a time. I just did my best at this moment, then the next one, then the next one. But man, when I got to the finals, it seemed like all that went out the door. It was just, I remember standing there getting ready to run out, and 20,000 people, watching my match. I'm wrestling against the returning national champ, and it was a school that I wanted to, it was my number one school that I was a big fan of. It was Iowa. So yeah, I just remember just feeling so scared. I felt like I was just going to crumble under the pressure. I was actually wiping tears from my eyes before I ran out. But something special happened when I stepped on that mat. I just remember, with all the chaos going on, I looked up into one section, and I was locked in on my mom and my brothers and my sister who were up there. And I just remember, just everything just got calm for me, and I just remember thinking, man, I got this. Life, all the challenges, all the obstacles, all the setbacks, the losses, it's prepared me for this moment. And that's how you got to look at everything in your life. There's going to be some challenges, there's going to be some losses, some setbacks, but the key is to learn from those things. It's to just allow those opportunities to make you stronger, and adjust. And so all my life challenges, it made me strong for that moment. And I said, okay, it's just about going out there now and executing the way I know how to do, the way I've been training to do.
That's awesome. Yeah. Was there a moment in your career where you switched that mindset to feel free? Because I know a lot of athletes, especially early on in their careers, they feel that pressure, they feel the stress, and they don't know how to control it. And it took me a while to understand how to control that. But what was the process of you learning to feel free on the mat or feel free in your sport? And what exactly? How did you get there?
Yeah, it was actually after my junior year. I finished seventh at the NCAA tournament, which, seventh in the country, it's still great. But for me, I felt like I failed. I was trying to be a national champ that year, and it absolutely just crushed me. So much so to where I didn't think I was going to come back my senior year, because it's like, man, I got to put all that work in for a maybe. That work to roll the dice to hopefully, cross my fingers to see if I'll get there and then possibly win. So I didn't think I was coming back, but I actually got a stack of letters from a group of third graders that summer in between my junior and senior year. And, the kids wrote me as their hero of the week, and they shared with me about how they were overcoming challenges and how my story inspired them to give their very best. And that's really what opened my mind and, opened my eyes to realizing I was wrestling more than just a gold medal or a plaque, or
Mhm.
a plaque behind me over here. You know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it was about just giving my best effort. These kids saw me as a role model, and my goal shifted from I'm not worried about winning a medal. I just wanted to show these kids, hey, you might have a missing leg, or you might have something else that's your challenge. But the key in life is just to not focus on the challenge. It's just to focus on your opportunities. Remember how fortunate and blessed you are, and do the best with the opportunities that you've been given. And so that's what shifted my mindset my senior year, to where it's like, man, I got one more opportunity this year to go out there and compete as a Sun Devil, to wrestle across this country. I'm just gonna make the most of it. I'm gonna let these kids see, hey, chase your dream, and whatever happens is gonna happen. But if you get in the end and say, hey, I did my best, that's something to be celebrated. That's a victory right there. And that's what changed my mindset.
That's awesome, man, and that's the truth too. That freedom allows you to be at your best and perform at your best, and there's a big difference, between just good and the best. And you were the best. What were some of the habits, disciplines, and mindsets that separated you from just being good to being great?
I'd say doing my best to focus on the little details. Because it's like the little details are the easiest thing to just overlook and say, I'm not going to worry about that. But those are the ones that make the biggest difference. So it was just the little details, whether it was in the weight room, making sure that every single rep that I was doing was a full rep, and it's not half effort. I'm not lifting something that's easy for me. In the wrestling room, I'm making sure that every single drill that we're doing, every single move is crisp and clean as I can possibly make it. Really just focusing on the technique part of it, not just going through motions. I think a lot of times as athletes, we do that, right? We go into practice, what, 5, 6 days a week, and, for a couple hours here and there. And when you're doing the same drill or the same technique over and over, you just go through the motions like, oh, I got this. I've done this over before. But no, every single time you repeat that drill and technique, you have to look for the next opportunity to sharpen it up a little bit more, to make it a little bit more crisp, a little bit more clean. So I'd say that was a huge thing for me. And then also just, learning from, like I mentioned earlier, learning from your setbacks, not being so focused on the loss, or what didn't go your way, just saying, okay, you know what, this is an opportunity to get better here. You know what, this just gave me the hole. I need to find a puzzle piece now to plug that hole. So just making sure that you're taking the data away from your losses and your challenges. And then also just remembering to stay positive. It's a long journey, wanting to be the very best. It can be exhausting times because you feel like you're trying to get way up here and you just stuck down here, right? But it's like, no, you're taking a little step, right? You're making the progress along the way, and you got to celebrate that. You got to remember to
Yeah.
take note of those things that you're doing correctly or that you're improving on to stay motivated. It's the little victories along your way to the big victory.
That's right. The 1%, you just keep stacking them up. That's my motto in life is to get 1% better each and every day. And you just explained exactly the process of that. So I think that's awesome. Up, guys, I want to take a quick second and thank one of today's sponsors, Children Health Services. They understand the importance of your child's well-being from the day they were born in the hospital. All the providers over there provide top-notch care. They have a new location on 10th Street, so make sure you guys go and check that out. It's really purple and looks pretty cool, and they have their old location on Arlington Boulevard. Hey, guys, I want to take another second and thank another sponsor of the show, Shimmer Boutique. Shimmer has some cool Pirate Radio camo sweatshirts in the store available today and on their brand new website, shimmerboutiqueonline.com. Their in-person stores are in Winterville, Greenville, Jacksonville, and they have that brand new website at shimmerboutiqueonline.com. They have some very, very cool clothes there, brands there like Yeti, Pimp Shrimp, Local Boy, and those cool brand new Pirate Radio sweatshirts. So make sure you guys go and get those. Thank you, guys, and back to the show. Let's dive into the good stuff, man, the great stuff, and that is about your faith. I'm a huge Christian, and so I really admire how you keep the Lord first, and you always put Him there. And you've spoken openly about your faith and it being a key part of your story throughout your entire career and your life. How has your relationship with God shaped your identity as an athlete and as a person as well?
Man, my faith, my relationship with God's been the center of everything. It's like I'm not perfect. I make my mistakes. I have my setbacks, but through it all, I just um, I'm blessed to have a God that loves me, that forgives me, and that has a plan for me, as He does for all of us. And I think that's one big thing my mom always used to tell me growing up was, God has a plan for you. You just got to be patient. You got to wait and see what it is. And I didn't know what that meant. And there are times where my life was just up and down and twists and turns, and I was broken, but that was all part of God's plan. It was Him shaping me, Him strengthening me to prepare me for not just the moment in front of everybody to win that NCAA title match, but afterwards as well. And so, it's kind of crazy going through it. You don't really realize it, because we can't zoom out and see the ultimate plan. We can't see, the roadmap that God's laid out for us, but we just got to have faith along the way and say, okay, yeah, there's a detour here. I don't get it. I don't understand it, but God's leading me this way for a reason, and going through my journey, man, it's like, there are certain things that happen that I wish didn't happen, but now that I look back on it and I see it, it's like, man, I needed to go through that because it prepared me for this. Or, I needed that because it made me more mature. It made me more aware, or it gave me an opportunity later on to be able to share with someone who's dealing with something similar, so, that faith in God, man, that just knowing He had a plan was huge, and there was times where I didn't want it, but I was grateful to where He's persistent, and He kept pushing me and leading me down that road. And, ultimately here I am, and, uh, I tell people this year, winning a title and the movie and everything else, it's all a blessing from God. I truly don't deserve it. I was just fortunate that He chose me for this opportunity, and I'm just very grateful and trying to use it to the best of my ability to honor Him now.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. It's funny you were talking about, zooming out and seeing your life plan because yesterday in church, that's exactly what they talked about is how,
Sure.
us as Christians always want to look back and see our plan in life because, God takes us certain places where we wouldn't choose ourselves. And
Yeah.
our plan ultimately doesn't really match God's plan. And that's for the good. And were there any moments in your career where you felt like God was redirecting your plan? You had this set plan. Hey, I'm gonna walk on. I'm gonna win a national championship by this age. Were there any times where through all the adversity, opportunity, and in His timing, do you feel like He was redirecting your path?
Absolutely. I remember one very vivid, actually coming out of high school, so I didn't get the offers like I was hoping for college, the scholarships and whatnot, but I did receive one wrestling scholarship, and that was to Drexel University, and that was a full ride. It covered everything. It was going to leave some money in my pocket at the end of the day, and the coach there was awesome. He was excited to have me there. I took my trip out there, my recruiting trip, and loved it. I loved the team, loved the coach. But I remember very vividly, I was on that trip, and I was actually sitting in the wrestling room. I was watching the guys drill. They're just going through their practice, and I even remember the song that was playing, in the wrestling room that day. And I'm sitting there, man, and I just remember very vividly just a voice in my head telling me, "This isn't where you're supposed to be. This isn't the plan for you." And I could not make sense of it. It's like how? Like, this is the only scholarship that I'm being offered. It's a full ride. They want me here. They care about me. I love everybody here. It's good. Like, this is like a great fit. Like, this doesn't make any sense, but, and then I ended up praying about it. And, I had this strong calling that I needed to stay in Arizona. I needed to go to Arizona State. And ultimately, zoomed out big picture, it was because I needed to be there not only for my family, to support my mom and my siblings that would be going through some rough times, but also I needed them. I needed their support to lean on them going through my challenges of college. And so that was just God's plan for me, big picture, where He completely changed the direction I thought I was supposed to be going. It didn't make sense at the time, but just having faith and just doing what I felt I was being called to do, it all made sense, because even bigger picture, it's like my lifelong friends are here in Arizona. I met my wife here in Arizona, and my life would have been completely different had I gone to Drexel. I don't know where I'd be today. So
It's awesome. Yeah, and it's funny how you talk about, family, like the community around you in Arizona because whenever I got into my accident, I was a freshman in college. Actually, I wasn't even it was the summer going into my freshman year and I got into a boating accident where I lost my leg below my right knee. And my family actually moved to Greenville, North Carolina. And I had originally committed to ECU because one, it's the best baseball program, in North Carolina, but also because it was like 2.5 hours away from my hometown. It was enough to where I could go home on vacation, but also kind of distance my way from them as well. But God knew that they needed to be in Greenville, and I needed their support through that time. And I'm so blessed that they moved up to Greenville, and they're now in my back pocket. And I get my mom's home cooked meals, which is always awesome. So I'm not
Can't beat
complaining
that,
one
man.
bit. But yeah, I can't complain one bit, brother. But you've built an incredible platform, as a speaker as well, and also an advocate for the limb loss community, which is absolutely awesome. When did you realize that your story wasn't just about wrestling, but it has a purpose for what you do now?
Yeah, I'd say it was midway through my senior year of college. I started looking into what I wanted to do career-wise after I graduated, and it was actually those third graders and those kids that inspired me to look into motivational speaking. And I realized like, hey, I do have a story. I do have an opportunity to share something that could motivate others out there. And I started to talk about just wrestling through life's challenges. Wrestling through the opponents that we have to deal with on a daily basis, and through it all, just believing that you can be unstoppable. It doesn't matter what challenge you face, doesn't matter what the setback is. It just matters, that you're willing to get back up, that you're willing to fight through it and find the positive things. So yeah, and again, just grateful for the change in plans. I had planned to win a couple national titles, and it didn't happen that way. I had to be broken, but that moment of being broken, it set me up for the rest of my life. It gave me this opportunity to pursue a career now that I'm so passionate about, which is helping others. Giving back as a motivational speaker. So, but yeah, I'm just grateful for this opportunity now.
Yeah, and you talk about helping others, and you went so far to help others to even write a book called Unstoppable. What message do you hope people get from reading that book and also hearing you speak? What message do you want them to go home and be like, man, that was awesome?
And that ultimate message is that anybody can be unstoppable. That word applies to every single one of us if we have the courage to take it, if we have the courage to make it our own. Because, again, it could be your challenge, could be something physical, it could be something mental, it could be something in the world, whatever. We all have something that can hold us back. We all have a challenge or an opponent that can break us down. But that word unstoppable means you just fight through it. You find a way to just keep moving forward. Just take one step at a time. The sun comes up in the morning, that's a new opportunity, and that's a blessing. And that's the way you have to treat it every single day. Okay, yesterday didn't go my way. Maybe yesterday I got knocked down, but you know what? Today is a new day. I can learn from that. I can get stronger from that. I can come back better today. So that's what unstoppable is. It's just keep moving forward and just the positive things in your life.
That's right. And your life story even turned into a movie, which I think is absolutely incredible. And I watched the movie on an airplane actually. So that's how I found out about you. And I was like, man, this guy is awesome. And obviously being in the limb loss community, is such an inspiration. How did that process kind of start of changing your life into a movie so that people around the nation, around the world can see that not only you're unstoppable, but, anybody in the limb loss community that, looks different is unstoppable?
It was kind of crazy, man. It was, right after winning my national title, I was getting some phone calls from production companies interested in telling my story on the big screen. But I really decided to take my time, make sure we paired up with the right group, to tell it, who's going to respect my story, and ultimately just share the message that we were hoping to get out there, that message of unstoppable. And I was just blessed, Artist Equity and Ben Affleck, they partnered up with Amazon, and they wanted to tell my story. And it was really neat because they included my family throughout the whole process, from start to finish. They included our thoughts. They made sure that we were comfortable with what was being shared. They were respectful, and they captured the ultimate message, what we were trying to get across. So it took a long time, as a long project in the works. But man, considering the cast that we got, with Jennifer Lopez, Bobby Cannavale, Don Cheadle, Michael Pena, Darrell Jerome, who all did a fantastic job. I could not be happier with how that film turned out, and just blessed with that opportunity now.
Yeah, yeah, it was awesome, man. So, Anthony, what's next for you, man? Whether that's
Yeah.
in wrestling, speaking, writing, or any new projects that are coming up in the future.
Man, I'm blessed. So right now I'm traveling as a motivational speaker. That's my main career focus, and I'm also actually a high school wrestling coach. You know, got to give a shout out to Hamilton Wrestling out here in Chandler, the Huskies. This is my
Let's
second
go.
season there, and yeah, man, I'm just trying to give back. My high school coach, he was like a father figure to me. And wrestling changed my life in so many ways. I just want to be able to give back, say thank you to the sport, to the people that helped me to get here today. So that's what I'm passionate about. Helping these kids, this next generation, wrestle through their challenges on and off the mat. And then just sharing that message of what unstoppable is to them.
That's awesome, man. And last question, dude. If you could sum up your life message in just one sentence, what would it be?
Ooh, one sentence. I would say my life in one sentence. It's been an up and down battle, but through it all, I believed in being unstoppable. Through it all, I found a way to be unstoppable. That's the key. You find a way to win. You find a way to get through what you're going through, and just take it one day at a time.
Let's go, dude. Well, Anthony, you're amazing, dude. I appreciate you hopping on the show for sharing your heart, your story, and your faith today. Many people across the nation need to hear your story, and there needs to be more people like you because if the world was like you, man, it'd be a better place. So thanks for always sharing your story, your journey, and ultimately sharing God's good grace, man. I appreciate you coming on the show and looking forward to following all your endeavors in the incoming future. And good luck to your Huskies as well, man. It's going to be awesome.
Hey, I appreciate you, brother. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity, and it was a pleasure to talk with you. Best of luck to you, my man.
Guys, that was awesome. Anthony Robles for you, man. He is a guy of faith. He is a guy who has faced many challenges in his life and is even a NCAA national champion in 2011 for wrestling. Guys, if this story has touched you and you feel like it has to touch somebody else in your life, make sure to share that with them. Sorry we are remote today. We had to make some accommodations, but we'll be back in studio coming back to you soon. God bless, and thank you for tuning in to the Parker Byrd Show here in the Legless Lounge. God bless.